So during this phase where we had large number of weapon wounded coming our way, there were a lot of soldiers that we had evacuated. So we heard that the commander in charge of the military headquarters of the area was in town. He comes and he greets me and says, "Oh, Dorsa, so good to see you," and shakes my hand and the whole greeting, and I was not happy. And he says, "What's wrong?" And I said, "You need to tell me who's in charge in this town." And he says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Who is in charge?" He says, "Come, sit, let me get you some tea." I said, "Nope, I would not sit down until you tell me who's in charge." He said, "I am." I said, "I will take a seat and I will have some tea, thank you." And then we started talking and I said, "You need to come and get these soldiers out of this hospital," because there were new clashes and I knew there were more weapon wounded coming. He said, "What time?" I said, "At 8 o'clock in the morning." At 7:45 I arrived. He's a military man. At 8 o'clock on the dot, he moved them to the military barracks, and all he asked me was, "I don't have a roof to put over their head, can you give me a tent?" And I said, "I'll give you 2. If that's how they could leave this hospital, we can donate you a tent." And then when we finished negotiating on him coming in the morning and facilitating the move, and then he just sat there and we were drinking tea, and then he said, "Why does ICRC always send me tough women like you?" And I said, "It's because you cannot say no to me."
We humans have created a society where, like it or not, violence is part of it. And it's been there for centuries, for ages, and it's going to continue to be there. Is that better? Is that worse? Well, I'm not sure. It's just a reality we have to cope with.
After World War II, when the international community was shocked at how humans had treated each other, the world came together and created the Geneva Convention. And even during times of armed conflict, there is a space for humanity. So there are rules that if you're not engaging in the conflict, you should be protected, such as civilians, the medical mission with the military and others. Today we see conflicts that are more protracted, they go for a longer time. They are more urbanised, so they often happen in urban environments. And an important point is they are layered. You have many different groups across the world, not just 2 parties to a conflict, many, many numbers of parties to a conflict.
It's not anymore war between two parties, between two countries. Mostly it's between a state force and several opposition groups.
Bonjour. I started working for the ICRC in 1998. By then, I had already over 12 years' experience with other humanitarian organizations, serving populations in terms of assistance, providing food, providing water, providing shelter. But I was interested in widening the scope of my job into the area of protection and prevention. I started running out of necessity. So in Lobito, in Angola, in the year 2000, I decided to put on shoes and try running. For 20 years, I've been running all over the world. In Afghanistan, inside the courtyard, turning around, or I've been running with the US soldiers in Guantanamo Bay, and we ran together, movie style, singing songs along the road. Across the front lines during the war in Liberia, and I was probably the only one crossing the front lines at that time because the guys were sleeping anyway and they were not in the mood of doing war at 6 a.m. in the morning, and they waved me and let me go through. So it has become part of my life and my daily sport. Both residents and mobiles. I have 12 coordinators, 8 of them are First Mission. I'm talking coordinators here. I'm not talking delegates. And I have 7 First Missions in positions that were all for experienced people. And then we have plenty of rotation.
Te presento a Benoit, el nuevo coordinador de administración para México y Centroamérica.
Muy bien, mucho gusto. Bienvenido. Nuestro mandato siempre gira en torno a responder a las consecuencias humanitarias de la violencia armada. ¿De acuerdo? Y de la violencia sea del tipo que sea, pero respondemos a las consecuencias humanitarias sobre esas poblaciones. ¿De acuerdo? Y México, como probablemente sabes, es uno de los países más violentos del mundo. En el año 2017 se batió el récord con más de 29.000, casi 30.000 muertos por homicidio. Residentes llamamos nosotros pues, a las personas que viven en su ciudad, en su pueblo, pero concretamente en este caso residentes en barrios marginales que están controlados por pandillas y por grupos armados que viven de la extorsión, que viven de la explotación, de la amenaza, aparte del tráfico de droga, de combustible, de lo que sea. Muchos de esos residentes, debido a esta situación de violencia, se convierten en IDPs, o sea, en personas desplazadas internas, porque tienen que salir de sus barrios y se vienen pues, a zonas periféricas de grandes ciudades, y hay muchas de ellas en México. De manera que entonces nosotros también trabajamos sobre las consecuencias humanitarias de esas personas que por la violencia han tenido que huir de sus barrios y convertirse en desplazados. Muchos se quedan como desplazados, muchos más todavía se convierten en migrantes.
Mexico is a very violent country. It is true, it's not a country in what we will call a formal war, but the levels of violence are big.
Bueno, en la colonia Zapata tenía yo mi hogar, pero empezaron a secuestrar maestros. Y entonces, antes de poner en riesgo a mi familia, a mis hijos, tengo a mis hijos, mi esposo, pues nos tuvimos que salir, ¿verdad? Dejamos nuestra casa, abandonamos y nos fuimos a vivir al centro de la ciudad. Y el gobierno prontamente nos atendió, nos enviaron a las escuelas, o sea, a los soldados, a los militares, y ellos nos han estado acompañando. Ya nos habituamos todos, la comunidad, los padres de familia, los maestros, los niños, ya estamos habituados a estar acompañados con los militares.
Violence is definitely one of the main reasons for the homicides and the disappeared in this country. All these groups that live out of trafficking of all kinds of things or extortion of the population, and the way of controlling the population obviously is by instilling fear. Fear is the way you control a territory and the population. But we're talking about a problem that comes from the past, but that it's growing every day. Every single day in this country, people go missing. We also work with missing migrants. Some of them may have been killed by armed groups, but some of them are missing simply because they died on the desert while crossing and nobody knows. Some of them are missing because they never called by home.
O sea, en las morgues de este país y en las fosas de este país hay 26.000 cuerpos que nadie sabe quiénes son. Y al lado de ellos tienes a las familias buscando a sus seres queridos que no saben dónde están. Es un trabajo enorme. Piensa que un equipo forense en un buen día puede procesar 3 cuerpos. Imagínate lo que se necesitaría para procesar los archivos básicos de esos 26.000 cuerpos acumulados en las morgues.
Well, South Sudan is a country that I know extremely well myself. I've spent nearly 5 years of my own life in Sudan, when it was still one country. And South Sudan is actually the newest country on the planet, gained independence in 2011, and I remember very well how people were hopeful and full of joy to be independent. And unfortunately, what we've seen since 2013, we've seen this country sliding back into very brutal civil war that has caused a displacement of more than 4 million. Tens of thousands of people have been killed, and yet it needs a political solution of this conflict to alleviate the suffering of people in South Sudan.
So we're going from Lankian, where it is at the moment the headquarters of the opposition, towards Motot, which was a town about an hour or 40 minutes walking distance to the front line. That is what. This is what we call the non-international armed conflict zone. where during the 2017 there was huge clashes between the two parties to the armed conflict. The reason this area is very important to us is because until January we didn't have access to this zone by car. Can you let me know when we are about to hit SPLA controlled area?
Just about, we'll show you the border.
Thank you, Rajak. It's a checkpoint. Yeah, you need to put your camera down.
And let's check inside the car.
Yeah. Just for now, until we get. When I first arrived here in November 2017, this didn't exist, and the majority of the people who were sitting under the tree they were all men. I didn't see any women and any children, all military. So you knew that this was the support for the front line. So you can see life has come back. People are returning slowly. My job is to understand and navigate a complex labyrinth of societal and tribal politics that is very, very foreign to me. I am a white girl from Australia. I do not understand what the nuances of a tribal setup of a Nuer of Akobo is. And for me, I have no power, but I have a great deal of influence, or my institution have a great deal of influence. My institution also, ICRC, has given me tools, whether it is by words, whether by its training, to be able to navigate this labyrinth of power. I was born in Iran, in Tehran, and I spent the majority of my teenage life growing up in that country. I migrated to Australia when I was 17 with my family, and I couldn't speak a word of English. I could say my name, I could say this is a cat and this is a dog, and besides that, it was very, very limited. Yes, I need to talk to you about this fighting that started in east of Lankien. There was a large military, well, it's a cattle raid. It's far away from Lankien, but then there might be some wounded coming our way. I'm in Walgak on my way to Lankien now, so I might have to update you in about an hour or two.
Okay,
Wait.
this is Lankien.
Well, that's Lankien, and
This is
Chuil is there.
Chuil is here.
And that's Sobat here.
Sobat here.
Is
Then
there.
along Sobat.
Towards Olfangak?
Towards Corpulus. Towards Olfangak. So
towards
the
Canal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
towards Canal.
2 cars when the first car went past and the second car was attacked. Whoever that came back, they need to provide us with information that who were these people who attacked them? Were they just cattle raiders because they would know the difference, or were they militia? Because this is where we will find out whether this is just a normal cattle raid or is this, as we call it, the more organized one.
Actually, Nuer do not have anything that they value so much than cow. Because cow mean everything. If you want to be respected in the community, you must be respected with the number of herd of cows you have. You cannot get a girl or you cannot approach a father of a girl for a hand of marriage until when you are known to the community that you have a number of cows. When you kill somebody, whether intentionally or unintentionally, the compensation is always done in terms of cows.
If you don't have a job and you don't have an income that you can buy a cattle, what do? The option is to go and take it from somewhere else. I'm not suggesting that this is an act of war, but I'm just saying that we need to be careful.
I have in my iPhone about 3,000 telephone numbers, and one of the first instructions was when I came here, don't give your telephone number to anybody. Yeah? You do everything via your secretary. And I did exactly the opposite. I gave my telephone number to everybody, and so people are calling me even from prison sometimes. So I had to go to Brussels to a hearing, and in this hearing there were senior people and they were examining me. What do you think about common security policy, common defense policy? James Steinberg was sitting there, and Richard Holbrooke, the father of the Dayton Treaty, And they asked me quite a few questions. It took almost an hour, But ultimately Mr. Holbrooke said, Mr. Insko, would you use bomb powers? I said, it depends, I would need a 6-step approach, The first step is to listen. Okay, what is the second step? Second step is to speak to the people, Okay, what is the third step? If the talks doesn't go well, then you start negotiation, Good, very good, negotiation. And then, if negotiations don't go well, yellow card. Good, Mr. Insko, Holbrooke said. Yellow card, very good. But what is the 5th step out of 6, The tête-à-tête procedure, You speak to a bad guy, tête-à-tête, Okay, but what is the 6th step? Holbrooke asked. I said, the red card, we eliminate the politician. And then he embraced me, he said, Insko, very good, The red card, the bond powers, very good, In the first 2 or 3 years, I used even bomb powers. I removed 2 nasty politicians. I rehabilitated also some other people who were on some sort of blacklist, Because if you're on a blacklist, you have no personal identity card, you have no passport. We have in Bosnia-Herzegovina the complete infrastructure of the international community. Whatever exists worldwide exists also in Bosnia-Herzegovina, but of course in a smaller fraction, We have World Bank, we have IMF, we have European Bank for Reconstruction, we have here the European Investment Bank, And my task is here to coordinate, and to create some consensus of the policy of the international community. sometimes some of the organizations are a little bit egoistic, yeah, or even autistic, and they don't like to share information with others. Yeah. Then we try to have a common policy, and then we are strongest. We are strongest when we are united. And we are weak when the international community is not united. Yeah? So my goal is to have a united approach of the international community. I would like to recall also a British principle which was used in the 18th century. A British lord who negotiated said, when you negotiate, you need a fleet behind you, a fleet behind you. So you are using the threat of force. You don't use a force, but the threat of the use of force. Yeah? When the Dayton was negotiated the Dayton Peace Agreement, it was funny that the Americans put it into an air base, Wright-Patterson Air Base. Yeah? So when Milosevic was sitting here, or Tudjman or Izetbegovic, behind them were the bombers, big aeroplanes, helicopters, etc. I visited it later. It's really impressive. Wright-Patterson military base. And so you could feel the force, the might behind America's role as negotiator. Of course, we also had a very skillful negotiator. The chief negotiator was Richard Holbrooke. Clinton was behind these negotiations. There was also Tony Blair behind this. The Russians were cooperative. I think this was time of Yeltsin. But in any case, the Russians were cooperative. And we could convince Milosevic and Tudjman and Izetbegovic to sign this peace agreement. Of course, in this peace agreement, nobody was satisfied, but the war was stopped. This is the biggest achievement, peace. And the second biggest achievement, in my view, which is underestimated, that Dayton created one state for all.
We don't need to work always in the limelight. We can do certain things because we enjoy the trust of warring parties as a neutral, impartial, independent organization that allows us to do things that you can't do if you don't have the trust of all the parties.
In Colombia, there was this historical moment where the government of Colombia was trying to initiate contacts and a dialogue with the FARC guerrillas to negotiate, to discuss the end of the 50-year war for this half a century. So for you and for the institution, it's a trial time where you have to earn the respect and the credibility of both sides.
One of the big challenges was indeed how to bring the representatives of the government of Colombia and the FARC to the same negotiation table.
And it's something that takes time, takes patience, takes a lot of coffee, takes a lot of discussions, and there is a moment where you carry out the first operation.
Hace tan solo 6 años, los colombianos no nos atrevíamos a imaginar el final de una guerra que habíamos padecido por medio siglo. Para la gran mayoría de nosotros, la paz parecía un sueño imposible, y así era por razones obvias, pues muy pocos, casi nadie, recordaban cómo era vivir en un país en paz.
Pues yo nací en un país en guerra, crecí en un país en guerra. Tuve varias experiencias que marcaron mi vida. Tal vez la más importante fue una conversación que tuve con Nelson Mandela, donde él me ratificó que Colombia nunca despegaría si no acabamos con la guerra.
La violencia como una forma del ejercicio de la política en Colombia ha sido algo prácticamente consustancial al sistema político desde el mismo momento en que terminó la guerra de independencia. Cuando se logra la liberación nuestra, digamos, del colonialismo español, inmediatamente se generan una serie de conflictos y de choques armados internos que van a determinar que el siglo XIX prácticamente pasemos nosotros en guerras.
In the 60s, insurgent groups used violence in order to obtain either concessions or even a change of power in the country.
Primero, en efecto, las FARC nacen como un movimiento agrario, como de reivindicación campesina. A veces me pregunto si esto no hubiera podido ser arreglado en ese momento de manera relativamente sencilla. Pero esta élite colombiana, que a veces es muy ciega, se opuso permanentemente a un proceso de reforma agraria. Y eso le fue dando oxígeno a unas FARC hasta el momento en que intervienen dos cosas: la Guerra Fría, entonces Moscú adopta a las FARC por razones políticas, y luego el narcotráfico, que es la gran desgracia de Colombia.
Sin embargo, es insensato pensar que el fin de los conflictos sea el exterminio de la contraparte, vencer por las armas, aniquilar al enemigo, llevar la guerra hasta sus últimas consecuencias. Es renunciar a ver en el contrario a otro ser humano, a alguien con quien se puede dialogar, respetando la dignidad de todos. Eso es lo que hicimos en Colombia.
Fue de los primeros realmente que me enteré sin saber mucho detalle, porque un día en un viaje en el aeropuerto me encontré con el alto comisionado para la paz y le dije: ¿a qué estás viajando tanto a Cuba? Se sonrió y me dijo: no vayas a decir nada, Darío, porque te puedes tirar esto, que va en serio. Pero ellos van en serio, me dijo. Sí, aquí tenemos acompañamiento internacional, esto se ha manejado de la forma más prudente, más secreta.
Y permítanme aprovechar esta ocasión para agradecer muy especialmente al pueblo noruego, a su gobierno, por su carácter pacífico y su espíritu solidario.
Norway has been doing this kind of work, peace and reconciliation, for the last 25 years, starting with the Oslo Agreement between Israel and the Palestinians in Washington on the White House lawn 25 years ago.
There was an idea that it was possible to do some good in the world finally, that we had left this Cold War, and that there was a role for a small country in the area of human security, human rights, peace negotiations that larger countries could not take.
Being a Norwegian diplomat, you get into this kind of work relatively quickly, and I remember starting at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs a couple of decades back. I ended up going to Colombia back in 2006, helping to facilitate peace talks.
I think that the most important when you play the role of the neutral intermediary is to be credible, to be trustful, to be neutral.
In my position, you have to be very frank. It's a very narrow road where one has to tread very carefully. Because if I put one step outside my modality that is being set by my institution, I would set a very very, very dangerous precedent.
Negotiate based on facts and figures. Yeah, of course we can always speak about politics, we can speak about the future, we can speak about something imaginary, but when you speak about facts, it's always easy because facts are measurable. They exist or they don't exist. Yeah.
You are not credible, neutral, or trustful because you say so. I can go and tell them, oh, the ICRC is a neutral organization. Okay, that's fine. Of course I will tell them that. But it will be them deciding whether I'm neutral or not.
The key is that the facilitator or the mediator gets to spend sufficient time with the parties.
We had to navigate our way around this and sticking to this very narrow pathway, it comes with a cost because they get frustrated, because they cannot push you off the line.
Bilateral negotiations, you have, of course, many times the situations that power is not always equally distributed. And sometimes you can also use power to be a beneficial element.
That's the point where you have to, I think, both parties will have to decide, are we going to compromise and work together, or it's going to be a clash and then we'll have to go our separate ways.
And I always say that the key to this is to make sure that you say what you do and you do what you say. This earns you the respect of people at the end of the day.
Ciao. Bye, 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 bye. Okay. They thought that we were attacked.
So we need to call the audio room
All right.
for the departure.
When I arrived, this hospital was occupied by humans and goats and dogs. It's a very special project for ICRC in South Sudan. In Akobo or across South Sudan, the physical infrastructure in this country is very minimal or non-existent, and it is very dependent on humanitarian aid to be able to function. Now, if you belong to a clan and you have a hospital like Akobo, where it's a source of income, there's an international institution that is coming to take over. It's an opportunity to people from your community, people from your subclan, people from your closest and dearest to have access to an income that is steady, that it's good, and it's a secure job.
So whenever there's a job advert, whether they do not consider the expertise they have, they only consider that the job advert is in this location, and it is only the citizen and the sons and the daughters of this location that are supposed to be hired. They do forget that, you know, there's a skill needed for this particular position, for a person to occupy this position.
So the challenge is how far do we go to challenge the nepotism that is in the community? It requires a certain level of humility to sit down and listen and then plan and scrap your plan and make another plan, to map these actors of influence, to talk with your staff, your people who live here, to go and sit in the market and have a cup of tea, to go and meet people under a tree and introduce yourself and allow them to explain their problems to you. And that's precisely what we had to do. They have their own hierarchical structure, they have their own influencers, they have the chiefs. The women have their group of wise women who essentially take care of mediation. You have the council of chiefs. You have different clans and sub-clans and sub-sub-clans, and everybody has a different agenda. They will go through a test because we want to bring their capacity to that standard. If they pass, that job will be theirs. This person has to be able to read. This person has to be able to write. And this person need to be able to at least communicate a certain level of English. We will give you 3 months probation. At the end of these 3 months, they will be tested again. If they get through, khalas, their job is theirs. If they don't, khalas, you go and the more qualified person comes in.
I think I am in a growing agreement with you that if your objective is to make sure that health services to be delivered by a Kobe County hospital should be on a competent basis by making sure that the staffs are highly qualified with technical skill, no matter what it costs. I will fully stand with ICRC.
I had to be able to control my emotions when it came to a context. It's very difficult when you are a head of operation for a context that it becomes your bread and butter. It becomes what you live, you breathe, you sleep every day. Good to see you. How are you?
The ICRC will speak to any person or any group involved in a conflict or any authority claiming to control certain areas. So there are no-go areas for us. I mean, we will discuss with them, we will discuss with whomever we have to discuss in order to get safe access to the communities, to the victims in need.
Widows, relatives of the victims in Srebrenica, see in the shop former soldiers, who were fighting for Republika Srpska, bus drivers who were driving buses when these prisoners were transported, It's very difficult. But I must say that these Bosniaks in this case, these are remarkable people. They have a lot of mercy, merhamet. They are merciful people. And after the war, I think there was almost no revenge killing. After 100,000 people have been killed, there was no revenge killing after the war. I really admire such people. First of all, Jovan Divjak is always being also mentioned because of his nationality. He's a Serb, even from Serbia. When he moved, he became very popular in Sarajevo. But most important was the period of the war when he, as a Serb, defended Sarajevo from Serb aggression. And I asked him once, Divjak, Jovan, why did you do it? You are a Serb, you defended it from the Serbs. He said, no, I would defend it even if the Muslims would attack Sarajevo or the Croats, doesn't matter. If somebody attacks my city, I defend my city. This is why I have defended Sarajevo. And later, after the war, he created an association which is called Only Education Will Build Bosnia-Herzegovina. Only education, yeah? I mean, this is interesting for any country, but especially for Bosnia-Herzegovina. And he handed over fellowships to more than 7,000 young people. War has ended, and everything will just happen, like reconciliation, yeah? Like having war criminals in the court. Nothing has happened. These war criminals went to Hague, and even there it took years and years and years. And even the last cases are being now handled these days, you know, against two security officers, you know, from security services, secret services, yeah. So it took now 26 years, 27 years, but in the international court. In local courts, very few cases are really processed. But this is very important for the reconciliation, because the truth is the foundation for justice.
We're helping not to identify, but to establish by our forensic teams what is called a basic information file. Before those bodies are buried or destroyed, there has to be a file with all the technical and personal forensic details of that body, in case one day we can find his or her family.
El nombre de mi hijo es Julio César Torres Páez. Nació el 25 de julio de 1991. Mi hijo al desaparecer contaba con 26 años, iba a cumplir 26 años. Es el único hijo que tenemos. De la noche a la mañana lo perdimos todo, porque nos quedamos sin nada. Mi hijo, Julio César, desapareció el 23 de junio del 2017. Empezó a trabajar el taxi a la edad de 16 años. La última vez que vi a mi hijo fue cenando a las 11 de la noche. Por las redes sociales hay una página en el Face que se llama Lo Real de Guerrero. Ahí apareció que en un pueblo que se llama Las Plazuelas, a las 12 de la noche, atravesado en el puente, habían encontrado un taxi. A las 0 horas, habitantes del poblado de Las Plazuelas reportaron que al iniciar el día de hoy, había sido abandonado un taxi amarillo con blanco arriba del puente de Las Plazuelas, y en las cajuelas se apreciaban los restos de un masculino desmembrado junto a una cartulina. La fotografía que apareció es esta, donde aparece una persona sin cabeza, con una cartulina. Y fui al poblado, pero ya fui como a las 8 de la mañana. Fui a buscarlo, es un lugar muy peligroso. Investigué y me dijeron que familiares se habían llevado el cuerpo. Pero me pregunté yo, bueno, los únicos familiares somos nosotros.
Pues yo le puedo decir que desde el momento que mi hijo desapareció, pues siento que estoy muerta en vida, porque era el amor de mi vida. Lo amo. Yo no quiero venganza, solamente quiero encontrar a mi hijo.
Missing is one of the most difficult issues to handle from the humanitarian point of view, and often is one of the most difficult issues to understand by those that don't suffer this problem. For many people, it's difficult to understand that a relative prefers to know the truth than to live in ignorance, even if the truth is he is dead. It is way more bearable for them to know that the son, the daughter is dead, provide the proper burial, mourn and close the case, than living in the constant ambiguity and anxiety of not knowing. It's extremely frustrating for a person, for a mother who's been looking for her son for 20 years, to know that it can be one of the bodies in a morgue just there, but there is no system that allows you to identify. We know we cannot solve the problem, at least not overnight, obviously, of these 26,000 human remains that are not identified. But what we try is to bring from the forensic side the expertise, the international standards, to train the existing capacity and try to increase that capacity also in the future by helping maybe create a national curricula for forensic, a national institute of forensics. So we try to bring all this material and technical and international standards expertise to build the forensic capacity of the country. Of course, this takes time, but it's the only way out.
Los cuerpos que nosotros levantamos están en varios tipos de condición. Algunos son cuerpos totalmente recientes y frescos y completos. Hay cuerpos que están en estado de putrefacción. Hay cuerpos en los cuales los levantamos solamente en estado de osamentas, o sea, puro hueso. Entonces, los levantamientos de puro hueso directamente se van a la osteoteca. Aquí hemos habilitado el resguardo óseo. ¿Sí? Momentáneamente tenemos pensado realmente construir un lugar específicamente con todos los elementos que nos marcan las normas y los protocolos para poder llevar a cabo. Pero debido al número importante de osamentas que hemos localizado en el estado de Guerrero, nos ve obligado realmente a utilizar este lugar para un resguardo totalmente óseo. Ustedes podrán ver realmente todas las cajas contienen un cuerpo. Estos restos son pura osamenta, pero esta osamenta ha pasado por un proceso realmente de estudios científicos, o sea, no están aquí nada más para resguardo, están aquí en resguardo, pero para poder ser identificados en su momento oportuno. Quizás a este cuerpo no se le hizo dactiloscopía, pero sí se le hizo antropología, sí se le ha hecho odontología forense y sí se le ha hecho genética forense. Por eso está aquí, para poder ser encontrado. Y ahorita actualmente tenemos 139 cajas o restos óseos en resguardo exactamente en este lugar. Porque llenaríamos un cementerio completo de tanto cuerpo que tenemos. Podemos observar aquí realmente, ¿sí?, que encontramos realmente un cráneo. Tenemos también, ¿sí?, aquí donde lo refiere que hay algunas costillas, que es la costilla derecha, parte del parietal, ¿sí? Hay una región pélvica, ¿sí? Y la presencia de los nuevos protocolos, la presencia de los grupos de familias que hacen colectivos para ya presionar al gobierno, presionar a nosotros mismos, decir, oye, ya no quiero que me digas de que murió, ahora que me digas si es mi familiar, yo quiero mi familiar y busco mi familiar. Entonces nosotros decimos, bueno, pues hay que hacer el siguiente paso. Hay que utilizar las ciencias forenses y hay que dar. Y es doloroso ver a una madre llegar y llorar y ver realmente que encuentra a su hijo exactamente en la plancha es dolorosísimo. Más cuando es un joven, doloroso, es un dolor que te lleva toda tu vida. Este tipo de causas de muerte, que no lo encuentras, es algo increíble. La gran satisfacción que tiene uno es que este cuerpo fetal llegue a su lugar de origen. Muchas veces para nosotros el dolor que tienen nos pasa. Sentimos, porque también somos seres humanos, porque tenemos hijos y no nos gustaría pasar por este momento tan difícil, ¿no? Perdón. Hoy haremos todo lo posible porque estos cuerpos lleguen a la familia, se ha inhumado, se ha velado, se ha rezado, se ha llorado en su casa,
If the war does not stop after 3 or 4 or 5 years and it prolongs for a decade or 15 years, you have this generation where sons and grandsons and daughters and granddaughters are less literate than their parents or than their grandparents. And this makes putting an end to conflict way more difficult, much more difficult. Because this is a generation where maybe when war started they were like 5, 6 years, and then 20 years down the road, war still goes on, but they are already 25 or 26. War is the only thing they know, and war is the only industry in town that can provide them a job.
See you guys. Hey, puppy. Male.
These two girls are by name Nya Sande and Nyadoth. Their father is called Pei Tiep Tiep. When the fighting erupted in Malakal, he was on the side of Ganal. So the children were under the care of one of his neighbor when they were in Malakal together, by name Shuol Pukong.
Okay.
So Shuol Puk is the one who had been taking care of this girl for the last 4.5 years. We frequently visited her, and we also facilitated the communication between her and the father, and between her and
and both are happy to be reunified with their fathers?
Very happy, very happy.
And the father wants to be reunified with them?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure. So he's saying that the life of a very living human being is very important. I do not have any interest having the life of this girl crossing the river with them, wrestling to make at least sure that they feel at home. So it was just more or less a humanity kind of sympathy. So I do not have any basic interest beyond this, only like to serve their life.
Okay, that's good. Shukran.
Shukran,
Thank
sure.
you so much for all your help with the girls on behalf of the father. Life is tough in South Sudan, especially for girls and for women. It's not the conditions of living, if it's not the nature of the conflict, if it's not post-traumatic stress, if it's not the way, maybe, I don't know, it's just everyday life, being married at too young, not having access to education. So you are Nasande? Yes, and in Nyato. Okay, nice to meet you. My name is Dorsa. They've been living here for 4 years, and every day they thought they were going to be reunified with their family. How many of Dorsa and Nasandes are out there? And they're much more exposed and much more vulnerable, and they don't have the wonderful protection that they have had for the past 4 years. And this must have been a very strong friendship between their father and the caretaker, because it's about solidarity. In this country, everything is a communal solidarity, and if you're not given protection, you'll die.
Tema wana ila biana mo kol wala ke kol goti binega nang ni chengo konte nei kol cheng la to ne kel gamal.
She's too young, she's sweet. This war has taken many smiles away from many, many children. She's very tall, no? I do get highly affected when children are separated from their families, especially if there are young children. Because I have personally experienced that, it kind of pushes me for a stronger motivation to push them to be reunited and do everything in my power that it happens fast and it happens safely and it happens smoothly. Just 2 days ago, our team in Orfangak, they traveled by boat to Diel and they met your father, their Baba, and then he's also very happy to be coming on Friday next week they're gonna come. We're gonna send a boat for your parents, and they're gonna be picked up from Diel, and they're gonna be coming to Old Fangak, so we're gonna meet them there next Friday. I don't know, a little bit more magic into the world, and the magic is 2 young girls being reunified with their father. Women having better access to healthcare, or children with, I don't know, chronic malnutrition having better access to healthcare.
I worked in Sudan between 2009 and 2011 when it was one country at the beginning. When I was there, it was crystal clear to us all that as soon as independence was gained and the common enemy of the North was gone, a civil war will continue and ensue. So I'm sorry to say that, and it's very sad because I love Sudan, but it's according to script.
Este premio pertenece también a los hombres y mujeres que con enorme paciencia y fortaleza negociaron en La Habana durante todos estos años. Y me refiero tanto a los negociadores del gobierno aquí presentes como a los de las FARC, mis adversarios, que demostraron una gran voluntad de paz.
Norway had been engaged in Colombia for a number of years, so we were in a position where we could see that with a change of president that occurred in 2010, it was clear that a peace process might start.
Estaba completamente retirado de la vida pública, aquí en mi oficina, ejerciendo como abogado, y Juan Manuel Santos me llamó. Yo no entendía a qué me llamaba, siempre pensé que era alguna cosa legal, como una consulta legal o algo así. Y cuando me senté, él empezó a comentarme que había una fase secreta de conversaciones con las FARC que estaba a punto de terminar Yo quiero confesarle que yo pensé, ¿será que la oficina de protocolo de la presidencia se equivocó? Este señor está hablando conmigo y yo no sé, realmente no tengo idea por qué me toca estos temas. Y al final me dijo, va a haber entonces una negociación y yo quiero que usted me acompañe como jefe de la delegación del gobierno, lo cual para mí fue realmente una sorpresa. Acepté porque entendí que era un enorme desafío, ¿no?
Cuando yo llego a esta instancia de dirección, tal vez a los 8 días llegó la primera razón. Entonces ahí me entero de que hay una posibilidad de iniciar unos diálogos y a partir de ahí pues estamos enterados de cómo se da ese proceso que fue muy difícil porque prácticamente nos gastamos año y medio tratando de ponernos de acuerdo de cómo hacer la primera reunión y las garantías de seguridad para hacerla.
Un acuerdo de paz como el colombiano donde las partes no tienen confianza en la otra parte requiere de personas o instituciones que ayuden a comenzar a establecer la confianza. Y aquí, por ejemplo, el papel de la Cruz Roja fue muy importante.
This is a role the ICRC must play because it helps to alleviate suffering that is due to the armed conflict that went on.
We became involved in the peace talks in 2011, sometime in 2011, when representatives from the presidency, they approached us on their intentions that of putting into place some contacts with the FARC and start discussing a potential peace talk.
Jordi Raich jugó un papel muy importante porque él fue la persona que se encargó de toda la logística de mover la guerrilla que iban a negociar la agenda de sus campamentos a los sitios donde se realizaron las conversaciones, que fueron Venezuela y Cuba.
Esas son operaciones muy delicadas, ¿por qué? Porque precisamente como son secretas, se corre el riesgo de que otros sectores de la guerrilla ataquen a un helicóptero o que el propio ejército, que no está advertido, piense que algo pasa y haya incluso la posibilidad de muertos.
Finalmente logramos generar un mecanismo y unos protocolos que eran relativamente sencillos. Era declarar un cese al fuego limitado en un área limitada. Llegaba un helicóptero de la Cruz Roja con delegados de los países garantes a bordo.
Cuba was a fantastic place to hold the peace talks. It was close to Colombia, so logistically it was easy to bring people back and forth. It's an island, it is not Colombia, it's not part of the continent, so it was isolated from everyday politics of the continent and Colombia.
Ahí estábamos ambas delegaciones, en esta casa nosotros y pasando el lago la guerrilla.
Y bueno, ¿por dónde comenzamos?
Both parties were nervous, I think, before the first meeting. They didn't really know what to expect. The parties spent quite some time on was to define the agenda items and to define what the overall outcome of the peace talks would be.
Y entonces recuerdo que hicimos como una especie de lluvia de ideas y anotamos en el tablero tal vez unas 52 palabras. Todo lo que pueda tener desde el punto de vista del lenguaje técnico-militar un acuerdo del cese al fuego.
La visión del mundo de ambas partes era totalmente antagónica, parecíamos vivir en distintos planetas.
Obviamente comienzan a surgir las visiones distintas y a surgir la confrontación.
Mire, esto no es una cátedra universitaria, ni es un meeting político, ni aquí vinimos a aprender uno del otro, ni a convencernos. A nosotros no nos interesa que ustedes cambien de ideología. De lo que se trata es de que dejen la violencia.
Nos dijimos cosas muy duras, pero siempre con mucho respeto.
Uno amanecía con el optimismo pensando, hoy firmamos, y a las 6 de la tarde estábamos en una crisis. De hecho, varias veces prácticamente rompimos.
Entre otras cosas porque se dieron dos momentos muy duros en ese periodo, y es que estando sentados en conversaciones, nosotros habíamos decretado un cese al fuego unilateral, y una patrulla del ejército penetra, digamos, a un área de mucha incidencia nuestra en el valle, en el Cauca, y mueren 18 soldados. Al día siguiente, llegar a la reunión no era fácil, digamos. Yo recuerdo que tomé la palabra ese día y les expresé las condolencias y no más, no se habló más del tema.
Utilicé algo que denominé la doctrina Rabin, el primer ministro israelí, que le dijo a Arafat, yo negocio con usted como si no hubiese terrorismo, pero seguiré combatiendo el terrorismo como si no hubiese negociación de paz.
tal vez 10, 15 días sucedió lo contrario. Ellos bombardearon 2 campamentos nuestros y murieron también un número significativo de combatientes, entre esos un compañero que había acabado de irse de La Habana. Ellos expresaron lo mismo y dijeron, bueno, esto es lo que no nos puede seguir pasando, son hechos de guerra y no más. Y finalmente hay un tercer momento en el que logramos ponernos de acuerdo en las cosas esenciales y empezamos a sentir que ese es un objetivo compartido.
Comenzamos a mirar cuáles son los problemas rurales en Colombia y el diagnóstico era coincidente, no totalmente, pero era semejante.
Empezamos a ver que el acuerdo finalmente tenía que ser el resultado de un trabajo conjunto y de alguna manera comenzamos a trabajar en función de ir cediendo cosas que al comienzo nos parecían a nosotros de principios irrenunciables. Con el tiempo usted va viendo de que no son tales, ¿no?
That peace processes, like so many other things in life, work only when you have determined and willing people behind. And that's why things worked out for a while with this peace process in Colombia. Not because of the ICRC, because the two parties at war really were willing to do it.
Haber visto al comandante de las FARC, alias Timochenko, solo, desarmado, depositando su voto en las últimas elecciones y luego verlo defendiendo la paz en el Congreso de la República, pues de eso se trata un proceso de paz, de cambiar las botas por los votos, las balas por la discusión sobre los temas nacionales, y ellos podrán seguir defendiendo sus ideales, pero sin violencia.
70, 80 years of use of violence. You do not come over in 2 years. It needs much more time. History has shown this in other contexts. And there are going to be ups and downs. There are going to be advances. There are going to be the contrary. And it's going to be extremely difficult, and it will hurt many people, because people have to say what they did, and maybe their children will be horrified with what they hear. But this is the price that any society has to pay for a reality that they have lived through.
¿Quién se hubiera podido imaginar que después de haber vivido y sufrido un conflicto durante casi 6 décadas, con un saldo de 300.000 muertos, familias destrozadas, siento que estamos saliendo al otro lado del túnel? Yo había sido objeto de unas amenazas muy concretas, muy serias, muy documentadas, en 3, 4 ocasiones por parte de las FARC. En una de ellas tuve que salir de un día para otro. Lo van a matar, le van a meter el carro bomba, o llegando o saliendo, está condenado. Eso contado aquí suena historia, ¿no? Pero vívelo, es duro.
Atención, se acaba de presentar una gravísima explosión aquí en el estudio de la cadena Caracol de Colombia en el Máster Central. Hay en este momento realmente algo de pánico.
Pasan 2 años, regreso a Colombia, se inicia ya en forma pues un proceso de diálogo, de acuerdo, de conversaciones. Me llaman en nombre de Carlos Antonio Lozada, un jefe de la guerrilla de las FARC, pero jefe de frente además, y pide ir a Caracol, pide ir al estudio para que yo le entreviste. Yo llamo a Humberto de la Calle y me dijo, pues mira, ese señor fue el que ordenó el último atentado contra ti. Y creo que como un gesto de reconciliación tuya, que quizás has sido una de las personas más perseguidas por la guerrilla durante los últimos años, es un paso simbólico maravilloso. Y lo recibí yo mismo en el ascensor. Y me dice, muy sencilla tu oficina, muy grata. Y yo le dije, claro, esta fue la que tú mandaste destruir. Destruir. Y le dije, ¿por qué vino? Me dijo, quería presentarle excusas, quería pedirle perdón a usted. Y a usted y a Caracol. Se arrepiente de lo que hizo, de lo que hicieron conmigo, con mi familia, durante varios años. Y me dijo, sí, esto nunca debía haber pasado. A mí, obvio, me conmovió. Él también soltó una lágrima, un par de lágrimas, y me dijo, es que usted ha sido un hombre demasiado civilizado, demasiado cuerdo. Usted tenía que odiarnos. Pensé que nunca me iba a recibir. Y aquí estoy con usted, para darle la cara, para decirle a los colombianos que este es el rostro de la guerra y que este acuerdo lo hemos logrado para que no vuelva a haber guerra en Colombia, para que no nos matemos entre nosotros.
When I was in Somalia, and I got the invitation from President Santos himself to attend the signing of the peace agreement in Cartagena de Indias. I still have it. I could not, obviously, because it was the role of my colleague that replaced me to do that, but I would have loved to be there. But I still have it framed. Finally, something was working, and it worked out well. For more than 30 years, I always lived in violent, extremely violent countries. In the midst of wars, in the midst of guerrillas, in the midst of armed groups that extort money from the population, in the midst of attacks and bombings. I always say that all that violence molds your way of thinking, your way of conceiving things. I always knew I will have cancer. I don't know if it's going to be only this one or there will be more later on. But I knew it because of a childhood trauma where my mother died of cancer, of a lung cancer and painful cancer when I was very young. Disease like cancer or any other of that caliber, you need to accept the situation yourself. You need to negotiate with yourself how you're going to deal with it.
I had over 20 death threats, and most of them were in writing. And once even somebody wanted to buy a weapon in a shop, and they asked him, why do you need a weapon? They said, I like to kill Valentin Inzko. There's also a lot of writing in the social media, and I got also once 5,000 postcards, Inzko go home. On about 18 or 19 postcards, there were death threats, and also a death threat against my son. There are a few days and weeks when you are scared. I'm a believer, and I think I have some guardian angels. Maybe I have an army of guardian angels, yeah, who protect me.
It is a tough job. It is a dangerous job very often, it is true. I have many colleagues that have been kidnapped, killed.
When I heard that Lorena had been shot, I was shocked. I think everybody was shocked. And her death broke a lot of my friends who knew her personally. Some of them left ICRC as because of it. She was a physiotherapist who worked in one of our prosthetic rehabilitation centers in Afghanistan, and she was shot in the chest by one of our patients. And she died instantly.
It's been a hell of a year. I mean, I had 5 surgeries, like 6 months of chemotherapy. Anyone that has this or any other difficult disease finds his or her own way of dealing with it. And mine has to not to stop working and to try to maintain as much as possible a normal life, or not to let cancer affect the way I live. I continued traveling from Monday to Thursday because on Friday I have the chemotherapy, but still I kept taking planes and moving around. So it's been also the way I've dealt with it.
I have learned about the goodness of people which exists. Good people are everywhere, and there are no bad nations. There are bad people, okay, but there are no bad nations.
The first 2 weeks that I arrived here, I was pretty much acted as the bulldog protecting this hospital. I was meeting with the community members quite often. They told me that in the community they called me Niagua. And I asked what Niagua means, and there are various, I guess, definitions for it. It means the good one, the honorable one, or the beautiful one. You can pick and choose. I thought that was quite nice. I always took it as a very positive token that my presence was an indication that maybe good was coming to this community and they could take a deep breath. You don't come to Akobo if you just wanted to work as a nurse or a pediatric doctor. You come because you want to make a difference. It's difficult here, it's hot, the conditions are minimal. You come because you want to make a difference. I like to hope that that's why people come to Akobo. They have just arrived, and then there is the main water borehole in the town of Buang is broken. So he can in fact take the mechanic with him if the spare parts are there.